Organized by the editor of Italia Stampa, a roundtable debate on the European economic and financial crisis took place at the European Union House in Dublin on February 2nd, 2012.
Financial and economic unrest. No one can afford the luxury of ignoring the impact this unrest is having on everybody's life. What is more intriguing is the complexity of the reasons why we are where we are today.
After an introduction by the organizer Dr. Concetto Lamalfa, who chaired the meeting, the distinguished speakers in the panel made their contribution to the themes tabled for discussion, starting from the corruption of the capitalistic system and ending with the austerity plan adopted by the various governments in Europe to overcome the crisis.
The first question is, the world and particularly Europe are in the economic crisis. Is the Western capitalistic model in decline? Or are we witnessing the birth of a new dimension, a new economic model, which we might as well call bankism? So I'll ask our philosopher first to make some observation on this.
First of all, not a particular philosophical idea. It is a pragmatic solution to the economic and the way of organizing the workforce and labor. So people, sometimes we lose sight of the fact of what really these models administer, should we say, or try to control. And in the case of capitalism, it was the way of exploiting natural resources and exploiting the work power of laborers. What comes in the middle of it all is the financial dimension, isn't it? That is, if we are cruel and polarize all the financial resources in the hands of few, then we have the inevitable consequence of exploitation by control of means of production. It is rather sad, if I may say in a more generic sense, contextualizing, it is rather sad that after the fall of the Berlin Wall, even academics who had spent many years studying the problems of Marxism.
This is not market economy. It's not a market economy. In Europe in large, the system of corporatism has been enshrined both all the way through the national state structures. Majority of the countries in Europe have some sort of the social partnership arrangements, and some they executed cleanly because there is a tradition of transparency and because there is a cultural necessity to be transparent. Nordic countries, for example, where the people live in much closer communities traditionally and existed so for centuries. They have developed the mechanism of being, in effect, islanders under constant threat of competition, and also as a response of that they developed transparency. We didn't develop that transparency because we constantly hid something from someone else. First from Brits, then for those elites of ours who replaced Brits at the point of independence. We did, and we continue doing so. We don't blame market capitalism for it. It has nothing to do with market capitalism whatsoever. Why are the banks bondholders in this country are being treated with a priority over anybody else in this country? Is that market capitalism? No. Market capitalism is based on the rule of law. And the rule of law is a contract in this case. And the contract between the bondholder and the bank who sold that bond to that bondholder is very straightforward and simple. It does not, in any point of that contract, specify that the taxpayers of the country will be liable for any of the debts of the banks. We violated the basic principle of the market economy by violating our own laws in order to rescue out the poor.
This is a model of capitalism, but when it's not working well, it's not capitalism anymore, it's crony capitalism. The same thing happened in East Asia. Before the crisis of 1998, all this business press extolling East Asia as a wonderful model of capitalism. Afterwards, it becomes crony capitalism. And we're getting the same interpretation in Ireland. We don't really have capitalism in Ireland. We have something called crony capitalism. There's not a country in the world where big business and the state doesn't intertwine. I mean, America, from that definition, is crony capitalism. Goldman Sachs is intimately connected with the American government. So it's important to see that capitalism is a system based on the sale of human labour. It's a system driven by accumulation for accumulation's sake. It is unconnected to the definition of the needs of human beings as a purpose of production. Now, Is that system in decline? Clearly it is. I mean, and you can demonstrate this empirically. If you look at the actual figures, you have a golden age of capitalism from 1948 to 73. From 73 onwards, we have lower level of growths in Western capitalism, certainly. Different argument in terms of China and India and so on. Lower levels of growths, more pronounced economic crisis. And I think now we've moved to a systemic crisis. A systemic crisis where the last pickup, lower level of investment in the economy by the leading capitalist powers than before, and a desperate system seeking ways out. And I'll just really finish on this, the question of bankism. Have we moved to something called bankism? But you have to ask the question, a very simple question, why did so much capital migrate from manufacturing to finance? Why?
We've talked about inequalities. Yes, there have always been inequalities, but what's happening at the moment is that the gap is widening between the rich and the poor, and the middle class, which is generally the bearer of general wealth in a domestic economy, which is the bearer of culture, which basically keeps the society going, is not spending at all, basically because A, they don't want to, or B, they can't anymore. But the problem is when the middle class gets out of the market, then you destabilize the system to a degree that makes it very, very dangerous. By example, being sort of from my own home country, Germany, the answer to deflation and bleeding the middle classes dry in 1933 was Hitler. That sort of reduces it a great deal. I accept that, but Germany in the early 1930s is a stark example of deflation gone completely wrong. And the kind of policies that we are seeing here in Ireland at the moment, as necessary as they may be, we can discuss that until the cows come home, lead to a situation where you basically push the middle classes out of the market, and people who are comfortable in their lifestyles are now poor, and poor people are more radical than people who have enough to eat and can see the children into school, the kindergartens, and so on. And that is a massive problem, and that's a huge potential for destabilizing the Irish, not just the Irish domestic market, but the social fabric of this.
The debate gave a chance to members of the audience to ask questions.
What I wonder is, it seems to me that
an argument I'll probably lose in front of Mr.
Construct. Once you have read and test and take out and divorce.
No real revenue back in it. There is no real economic activity back in it. And there is only the promise that as long as the tax revenues from transactions on homes in Dublin will continue materializing, we will be solvent. And the minute the transactions of homes have gone belly up, the whole scheme collapsed and became insolvent. So now, tell me this, was there greed? In my view, there was political greed. That's true. They wanted votes. And they appeased the electorate and bought it by giving them those promissory notes. And we are now responsible for paying it. Now, don't take me wrong. Bankers had greed. We've talked about bankers. By the way, let's correct as well ourselves a little bit on record here. I'm guilty of that. I use collective bankers. There are banks in this country today operating which have never been bailed out by anyone. They are the ones who are actually suffering from a bailout because throughout the years of the crisis, they had to go and borrow money at 5–6% while their competitors were given money at 1%. They had to use real assets as collateral while their competitors were depositing effectively garbage into the central banks and getting the money out of them effectively for free. We can name those banks. There is a excellent South African bank, highly rated in gold, which never been rescued, which operates in Ireland for many years, called Investec. Have you heard of them? Yeah. They're doing business, they're still in business, they're having a hard time competing in this environment because we are subsidizing with taxpayer money the insolvent zombie AIB, Irish Life and Permanent on the permanent side, and on, the host of them. So there are some bankers who are okay. There are some bankers who have blown up. A lot of it is greed which has not been, it's a greed which has not been based on actual real capabilities. It was a greed based on the hope value of the investment. Yes, that's true. Now, by the way, if you go back to the American market, to which we have very tangential relationship because our current crisis has nothing to do with America.
At the end of the debate, those present were treated to a magnificent Italian buffet offered by Little Italy Limited, Dublin.